Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're now with me, Mohammad Yusuf, for TVS News at 5. Let us begin with our top story. The Malaysia Agreement was written to ensure a safe and successful decolonizing process, as well as clear and equal terms for the formation of Malaysia between the 4 territories, namely Sarawak, Sabah, Federation of Malaya and Singapore. On September 16, 1963, the union we know today as Malaysia was born. However, due to political differences, Singapore separated and became an independent state in August 1965. Sarawak and Sabah remained as the 2 founding partners of Malaysia. But over time, the autonomy granted to these regions has been slowly diluted. The cause of autonomy for Sabah and Sarawak is once again on the national agenda today and gaining momentum. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with MA63, its purpose and its importance for the 2 Bornean states, we have Sarawak State Legal Counsel, Datuk Sri J.C. Fong, who we interviewed earlier today, to give us a detailed insight on the matter.
Well, the Malaysia Agreement has been described by the then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom as the birth certificate for Malaysia. It is upon this agreement and the terms agreed upon by all the participating parties, including the representatives from Sarawak and then the state of North Borneo, as it was known that time, to enter into the Federation of Malaysia with all the necessary safeguards to be embedded in the federal constitution so as to protect the interests of Sabah and Sarawak. All those safeguards were then embedded into the federal constitution and through the passing of the Malaysia Act 1963.
Last week, during the Parliament sitting, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Sabah and Sarawak Affairs, Datuk Sri Dr. Maximus Ongkili, said to ignore the MA63 is to reject the Federation of Malaysia because without it, there will be no reference and basis to discuss issues that can benefit the 2 Bornean states while focusing on fulfilling what was inked in the agreement. Now, how well versed are we with the rights embedded in the Constitution that are promised to both Sabah and Sarawak, and how many of these promises have been fulfilled?
Number one, there is now a recognition by the federal government that we can impose state sales tax on oil and gas. And this has been upheld by the court. Number two, we are reinforcing and reiterating also our rights to have the boundary of Sarawak as defined by the order in council made by the Queen of England in 1954 to extend the boundaries of the state to cover the seabed and subsoil which forms the continental shelf of the state of Sarawak. Okay, and that includes having a review of how the oil and gas resources should be, or in other words, enhance the state's ability to participate in oil and gas exploration offshore Sarawak. And at the same time, we have now recovered our rights to regulate oil mining activities onshore Sarawak. We are also working with the state the federal government to reclaim those lands which are no longer used or required for federal purposes, which under the Malaysia Act should be returned to the state by federal government. We are also taking measures to protect our environment by asking for the subject matter of environment to be included into the concurrent list. So is our request for tourism to be also placed in the concurrent list to enable the state to pass its own laws to regulate the environment in the state of Sarawak. This is important because measures that had to be taken to reduce emission of carbon dioxide to mitigate the effect of climate change.
Now, on July 10th, Sarawak's Premier Datuk Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg stated the mention of a new agreement to replace MA63 should be out of the equation. It all began when Barisan Nasional's Deputy Chairman, Datuk Sri Muhammad Hassan, who proposed the new agreement as a more concrete way in realising the rights and demands of Sabah and Sarawak. However, to propose the new agreement replacing the MA63 itself is rather questionable. Does it have elements of personal gain, or is it a method of getting political mileage, or is the federal government unable to return these rights due to economic reasons? Let us get back to Datuk Sri J.C. Fong on the matter.
The object of MA63 have been accomplished. And you can't come up with a new agreement, with regard to give effect to something which has already materialized. So the best that can be done is, if there are some lapses or dissatisfaction over the implementation of MA63, that has got to be negotiated within the framework as provided in Article 8 of the Malaysia Agreement. It is then to these type of differences or lapses should be discussed between the central government and the states of Sabah and Sarawak. So long as the federal government is willing to discuss these issues relating to lapses or failure to comply with certain agreed terms and conditions or safeguards in the Malaysia Agreement, there is genuine hope that at the end of the day, these differences can be resolved and Malaysia will be a stronger, more united, and more progressive country. We must ensure that the basic structure of the federation as enshrined in the Malaysia Constitution is upheld. And that basic structure involves certain special rights, privileges, autonomous powers in terms of immigration, more legislative powers, greater sources of revenue been assigned to the state of Sarawak, been upheld at all times.
On to the next news. Students in Sarawak will have the opportunity to learn about galaxies and outer space closely through the mobile planetarium, making its debut during the Sarawak chapter of the Keluarga Malaysia Aspirations AKM Tour this weekend. The AKM Tour program will be held at Dataran Perayaan Petrojaya, Kuching from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on August 5th to 7th.
Senior Works Minister Dato Sri Fadilah Yusof said the mobile planetarium would be the first to be made available at the AKM Tour, courtesy of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, or MOSTI. The Works Ministry is the main organizer of the Sarawak edition of the AKM Tour this year. Fadilah said the Sarawak AKM Tour would also showcase the culture and uniqueness of the state's delicacies, such as Sarawak Laksa, mi kolo, and layer cakes. UNIMAS will be invited to give a talk on the first day of the program on August 5th, mainly on the programs that they can take to a global level and on their efforts to popularize UNIMAS. He added that there will be 28 booths and 6 mobile counters to complement the programs at the main stages, besides the special tents, which among others will promote new innovations in road construction. Organized in cooperation with the Shared Prosperity Delivery Unit of the Prime Minister's Department and the State's Secretary Office, the AKM Sarawak Tour is the continuity of the one held in Kelantan on July 22nd to July 24th.
Wrapping up TVS News at 5, South Korea's new COVID-19 cases fell below 50,000 on Monday on fewer virus tests during the weekend. However, the number of seriously ill patients reached a 2-month high amid a virus resurgence fueled by a highly contagious Omicron subvariant.
The country added 44,689 new COVID-19 infections, including 436 from overseas, bringing the total caseload to 19,820,739. Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, KDCA, said Monday's figure sharply fell, mainly due to fewer tests, but is still larger than the 35,860 cases logged a week earlier, as the country has seen a resurgence of the virus triggered by the spread of the Omicron subvariant BA.5, the most transmissible variant yet of the coronavirus. The growth in new infections led to a surge in the number of seriously ill patients. KDCA further added that the country reported over 200 critical cases on Monday. The highest figure was after May 18, when the tally stood at 313. Meanwhile, 21 deaths from COVID-19 were reported, raising the death toll to 25,068.
See the world closer with TVS as we bring you the latest news updates both locally and internationally. Just a click away by heading on to our website at www.tvstv.my or follow us on our social media platforms. And that's all the time we have for TVS News at 5. I'm Muhammad Yusuf. Thank you for watching.